Hey guys, today I'm here for an interview with Imam Tawhidi, who is a practicing Muslim, scholar, educator, revisionist, and in his own words, Imam of Peace. A few of the things he stands for, which I think are very important to mention just before kicking this interview off, are establishing global peace, condemning terrorism, women's and children's rights, removing barriers between Muslims and non-Muslims, and ending violence, radicalism, and extremism. Thank you so much for joining me, Imam.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, it's a pleasure on my end as well. So to get started, do you mind giving an overview? Because there are so many that are uneducated on what actually Sharia law is. So do you mind giving a brief overview of what Sharia law is and what reforms, if any, do you particularly advocate for?
Sharia law is a combination of a set of duties or rulings deducted from the Holy Quran based on several interpretations according to the understanding of several scholars due to their particular education in a specific seminary that has resulted in a fatwa or a verdict basically reflecting what they could be God's law. In other words, Sharia law is an opinion of a scholar of what they think is God's law.
Okay.
Now, because of some scholars, they believe in the violent version of Sharia. You'll find that there's lots of violence within the Sharia law: the beheading, the killing, the slaughtering, the lashing, the stoning, and all of these violent practices that are legitimized through Quranic verses, which basically don't endorse that, but because of the interpretation that was part of the development of Islam, there were those that still want to hold on to what was suitable in those eras and in those times, and was seen as a norm, as a normal form of punishment during those eras, and even during those, let's say, eras that were influenced by such barbaric cultures.
Mm-hmm.
I believe right now it's about time we took a look at the development of Islam, and actually, I don't want to let's say, ban the Quran or anything like that. But what I want to do is I want to take a look at the interpretations of the Quran and be very flexible with how I can deal with the interpretations. I can ban some of them. I can deregister some of them from the state libraries and universities, so they are not considered to be sources of Islamic scripture or even sacred scriptures, because then that influences the PhDs and the thesis and the other research our students are doing in universities, and also even have them banned when being shipped into the West. In large quantities, so we can have one in a very important library just for research. But I wouldn't endorse having 1,000 copies being spread around mosques and Muslim private schools and so on. So it's about time we drew the line for violent Sharia law, and we actually said, you know what, it's about time. We don't want these beheadings in our society, or even people that think it's okay. And we brought in a new curriculum, a new methodology of Sharia law that basically says, love for your brother what you love for yourself, and take care of the Jew like how you would take care of the Muslim, and love the Christian and sit with the Buddhist and embrace everyone. The word Sharia basically means duties and what is permitted and not permitted. It means the path. And right now, the path of Islam has gone down a very violent road. Now, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying all Muslims, but the majority. We cannot
Mm-hmm.
deny that the Sharia law, the books that promote the violent version of Sharia law, are revered by the majority of Muslims. And this is the problem. The problem with my interpretation of Sharia law, my interpretation of the life of Prophet Muhammad, and my vision to religion is actually followed by a minority only. And
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at 3 to 5% within the whole religion.
Okay, yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. So most Muslims then practice or at least believe in the violent form of Sharia law. Would you agree with
Yes,
that? Yes, okay.
most Muslims revere books that promote beheading, killing, stoning, and these books are the Bukhari, taught by Ibn Taymiyyah and Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and these ideologies are funded by Islamic governments such as Saudi Arabia, and at the same time the very scholars that promote beheading are labeled as the grand sheikh of Islam, the patriarch of the scholars, and the great eminent erudite scholar, and we actually need to classify these people as terrorists. They are not scholars, they are ideological terrorists. They are people who have paved the way for the ideology of ISIS and so on. And whenever we speak about Saudi Arabia, they're the Sunni Muslims, but it's not fair that we only take a look at the Sunni Muslims. We should also take a look at the Shia Muslims, because in Shia Islam we also have terrorists such as Hezbollah and also Khomeini and Khamenei. These people are terrorists, and the same way. So my mission isn't to be favoring one Islamic denomination over another. I don't have any interest in that. In fact, I'm seen as an outcast even within my own community. It's a matter of looking at Islam from the outside box. You can still be a practicing Muslim, but look at it from a wider vision and denounce everything that is wrong in every denomination. That is the only way we can move forward.
So in your opinion then, if I understand you correctly, you believe that many of these Muslims are being radicalized because they have the incorrect interpretations of Sharia law and the Quran. So, but it's very subjective then. So is how the Quran is traditionally, standard by standard, how it is translated right now, is it violent then? And you are advocating for it to be reinterpreted?
I wouldn't say interpreted in a wrong way. I can't say that, no. Because according to the evidence these interpreters have, and these interpreters aren't only people who know Arabic and English and then start interpreting or translating or even transliteration. These people who interpret are actually well-qualified scholars within the history of Islam, and they have large amounts of followers in the millions. And when they interpret, they're not interpreting out of thin air. These people are actually well trained to understand specific verses in a specific way. And when you're trained that from a very young age and you grow to be an erudite scholar who's got 1 million or so somewhat followers, it's not going to be easy for us to turn around and say it's a wrong interpretation, because according to that very person, it's the most authentic and accurate interpretation one could ever have. And the main reason why we have so many interpretations of the Holy Quran is because every scholar believes the other interpretation isn't accurate, so they come up with a different interpretation. I wouldn't say they're wrong. I would say they are right, and they were suitable for a specific era, for a specific time, for a specific place. I understand, and we would appreciate as Muslims that the Quran was revealed in Arabia. Therefore, it would take the circumstances of the Arabian culture and the Arabian nation. But that does not mean that what applies to Arabia would necessarily be applying to the West. Now, we have a big difference between a Western culture, which Muslims can integrate to, and we have the Muslim culture. So a Muslim living in the West also lives by the Muslim culture, and there's a big difference between Middle Eastern culture and Muslim culture. There's a Muslim nation within America, and their leader is the Mufti in Saudi Arabia. There's a Shia Muslim nation in America, and their leader is the supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei. And this applies to every Islamic country. The Muslims are citizens of the West, but they have a loyalty to the leader back home, which makes them somewhat from that Muslim nation, makes them affiliated with that Muslim nation. So if the Muslim nation goes to jihad with the West and Khamenei issues the fatwa, his representatives in Australia would go crazy at the government. So we're talking about how things are applied today, but taken from text that existed 1,400 years ago. Reformation doesn't mean we wipe out the text. Reformation basically, in my books, mean that we look at the book and we say, okay, this was the development of Islam. we'll take a look at it as a historical document, and we'll move on to more modern jurisprudential deductions of a Sharia law that is compatible with the West, that does not include any beheading or stoning or lashing.
So do you believe then that Islam, there is a chance that it truly can be reformed?
Well, Christianity got rid of the violence within its religion, and also Judaism and many ideologies throughout history were subjected to reformation, or shall I say filtering or even cleansing. But the main problem with Islam today is because, Islam comes from the Middle East. Middle East has lots of money, lots of oil, lots of money. And when they're emotionally attached to such an ideology, and this ideology tells them that they are the chosen nation and they are the best and they will be going to heaven and all of these promises, they promote this ideology with heavy dollars. So you'll find the Saudi Arabian government funding Australian schools, funding American universities in the tens of millions of dollars. And this raises many questions as to what exactly does the Middle East have that's influencing these universities there, because universities are exactly what graduates our doctors and engineers and judges and professors and media analysts and even presidents and prime ministers. And when these universities are directed in a certain way to think in a certain way, that's why you have in America now, every time someone wants to oppose radical Islam, the students rise and start chanting against the speaker, and we're seeing intolerance within the universities, and all of these stem from the Islamic funding from Islamic governments under the table to these universities, the new establishment of centers for thought and Islamic education. We need to take a look at Islam as a religion that is spreading, and it's spreading very fast. Statistics say it's the fastest spreading religion in the world. I don't have a problem, and I would appreciate that many other people, non-Muslims, also don't have a problem with Islam spreading, as long as it spreads in the right direction. It spreads in the direction of love and respecting Jesus, respecting Moses, respecting other people. And reformation is possible. It's just a matter of how it's reformed. We cannot turn around to the fastest growing religion and say pull the handbrake and you're all wrong. It needs to gradually happen. Now, I'm copying a lot of hate and death threats because I could safely say that I am one of the first outspoken imams in English to the Western world, and I'm raising awareness. Many people say I'm exposing, but I don't see myself exposing. I'm actually raising awareness, and that awareness is actually threatening to the people, because there are secrets within the faith that needs to be concealed. And so I see reformation a few decades away, but it is possible to pave the way for it now.
Do you believe that, for example, the left, they don't really admit that there are any issues with Islam and that there are no reforms that need to be made? Do you believe they are hindering progress to that reform by not admitting that there are issues that should probably be dealt with and reformed?
The left is always in search of answers. It's always in search of respond to the right with. When you're always in search of answers and you're always in search of responses, that basically means that you don't have one solid answer to satisfy one large majority that sees there's a problem with Islam. The left isn't made up of online activists alone. It's made up of government officials, prime ministers, presidents, and even people who influence the giant banks and so on. And there are those that believe in order for the right to remain powerful, the left needs to remain outspoken. So in order for good to continue, evil needs to exist, so we can point out the right from the wrong. And these are people that have nothing to do with neither the left or the right. They're just living off this discussion. And we could even label them as the media. Some media outlets couldn't care less about left or right. They only care about selling content and more advertising. And obviously, media does pave a big way in revolutionary ideas, in even government revolutions and so on. So the left isn't one organized body for us to be pointing the finger at. But what we can agree upon is that either the left are ignorant or they're suffering from a mental illness, because you cannot possibly tell me that after a terrorist attack, the only thing you can do to improve society is go out and thank the nurses for their good job in taking care of the injured ones, but you wouldn't take a look at the politicians and say, hey, listen, coming next election, we don't want any policies that tell me we're going to be building submarines and taking care of the non-existent bullying policies for educational departments. How about we take a look at national security and start investing in national security, because clearly we have a problem with radicals coming into this country, and they are not Christian, they are not Jews, they are Muslims, and the majority of the imams are silent.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's very difficult because whenever terror attacks do occur, such as the Manchester attack, and you do speak out against it, like this is a problem and it does need to be looked at, examined, and solved somehow, you get so much vitriol and hate from these people just for questioning it and saying, we don't want innocent people, innocent women, children, and men to die anymore. So it's very difficult because they're not even willing to have a discussion about it. But I personally don't know what the solution is. And that's why I was very interested in speaking to you in regards to your plan to reform it. Do you have one in your mind, like certain things that, obviously you're speaking out to raise awareness, but are you, traveling around and trying to go to maybe universities, for example, and speak to people, or is that maybe too dangerous?
Brittany, I've only been discovered in 2016 by Australian media.
Okay.
And it's been 1 year that I've been gathering an audience that is interested in what I have to say. And we're growing in number. And there are many Muslims, not in the thousands, but in the hundreds, locally and also around Australia, that do agree with me and do agree with what I have to say. The only issue here is how we can go about forming an organized organization that actually tackles radical Islam in a educational, ideological, intellectual, professional manner. We don't want to be labeled as the radical, violent, alt-right people. We're not that. We have a mission of reforming ideologically. We're not interested in clashing and protesting and so on. Mm-hmm. Therefore, for me to announce all of my plans right now, knowing that there are many powerful Muslim figures around the world that are working against me right now, and they're trying their best to silence me, issuing statements, turning the communities against me, cancelling events, and all of these things. I need to take all of these into consideration, because the moment I announce something, I need to be prepared to fight for it and defend it. Because if we give people our ideas, then they could run with it and ruin everything. Yes. I will be touring the world. Last year in September, I toured South Korea, America, but I wasn't very well known within America. And I traveled California, Washington, and so on. I had meetings with government officials. In Australia, I enjoy a healthy relationship with the local governments, and also I've had many meetings with other government officials throughout last year, 2016. But I do plan on reforming Islam through diplomatic and international relations. We cannot allow people to stop funding our universities only because they have the money to, and take our way of life away from us. I believe it's about time we looked at our priorities and really cared about what's coming for our coming generation in this country and also in America.
I wasn't actually aware that you've only been active about a year or less than a year. You already have, 70,000 followers on Twitter, I believe, or near, which is wonderful. It seems. Do you find that online that your ideas and your propositions for reform are being embraced by a lot of people?
The social media does play a big role in the way things go for me. However, I think it's the honest media in Australia, Channel 7, that really care for this country, and they gave me a voice to voice my opinion. And there are other radio stations here and there that were concerned about radical Islam and gave me a voice. Sunrise Channel 7 was the day it was the interview where I confronted Jamal Rifi. You've probably seen where I raised the Al-Qaeda flag and I said, this is what it's come down to, where these are being sold in Melbourne, Australia. And I confronted him, telling him to not lie to the Australian public. I think that's what sparked people's interest, coming towards me and saying, what does this Imam, who could look like Bin Laden for all we know, he's saying some really sensible stuff that we want to hear, and I'm very proud to be that person who's actually standing up for this country and for Western democracy.
So I noticed on your Twitter the other day that you had tweeted about possibly debating Linda Sarsour, who is the pro-Sharia feminist. Do you think there's a possibility she will agree to speak with you? And if you were given the opportunity to speak with her, what would you say?
I've given Linda Sarsour many options. She either comes and debates with me, and I have many questions about what she says. She says the Prophet Muhammad that she believes in was an environmental activist, was a human rights activist, and so on. However, according to her own book, her own faith, which I have over here, her own book, and which I keep bringing out to my live programs, her own Prophet Muhammad, her version of the Prophet Muhammad, is a barbaric pedophile terrorist, according to her book. So, two options: you either denounce your faith, or you come and you tell us that the Muhammad you're preaching isn't the real Muhammad you believe in. So either way, if you tell the public that the Muhammad you're preaching isn't the Muhammad you believe in, then you've lied to the public. And if he is the Muhammad you believe in, then denounce your faith, which is basically the most sacred book after the Quran. You're left in a very sticky situation, Linda, which is why I left the options very open for her. If she doesn't want to come and debate, then bring her imams, the mosques she attends, those who support and agree with her. Let's debate. And if the imams don't want to debate, then at least any Muslim body that has the courage to come and defend their version of the Prophet Muhammad, because my version of the Prophet Muhammad doesn't go around marrying 9-year-olds and doesn't go around hating Jesus Christ and isn't an antichrist. My version of the Prophet Muhammad is a reasonable version to be following. The problem with this version, and I keep saying this over and over again, only a minority follow this version, because the majority of Muslims love that version, the violent version of the Prophet Muhammad. That's what shapes their ideology. That's what shapes their culture. Because if you turn around and you say, okay, the violent version of the Prophet Muhammad is rejected, then you have a big question mark on your entire history for 1,400 years. Then why now? So all of your scholars are liars. Your whole system has been a fraud. You guys hijacked your own religion. You transformed it from succession to kingship, and you changed the whole purpose of religion. Because when Muhammad emerged, all right, for example, let's say I am the Prophet Muhammad and I come into Australia and I want to preach and I want to form a religion. I will not be gathering an audience if I say, let's go around killing people, let's go around marrying young girls, let's go around butchering people. No one's going to believe in me. My message isn't going to spread. Therefore, logic tells me Muhammad started off with peace, with love, with care. However, that changed as soon as he died. And don't forget, his message was only there for 20 to 23 years. He was a prophet at 40 and he died in the 60s. So he wasn't really around for 100 years. It was these 20 years, and he lived in poverty, and he escaped his own hometown, 8 years, Mecca, 8 years during that period. So the only thing we have from the Prophet Muhammad is 12 years of preaching. And if you're going to take 12 years of preaching, which is basically what, from primary to high school, you can't really use this amount of time to establish a religion all the way from Mecca to Bosnia to Indonesia when you have no technology, no social network whatsoever. So it's clearly you guys spread the religion after Muhammad with the sword. You invaded, even if they call it conquests. What Islamic history calls conquests is actually it constitutes invasions. It's referred to in political science as invasions and as colonialism, and we cannot deny that. Even if it's called conquest, it's invasion. And we need to either say our history is right, therefore the formula for our history that we have between our hands today is right, But when we open it, it's clearly violent, which means we need to turn around and say our history was violent, and it puts Islam in a very sticky situation today. And the only way we can actually reform is by turning around and saying, you know what, we were wrong. Sorry, we apologize for all the deaths caused. Let's work together and unite against the radicals within our community. Linda Sarsour does not want to unite with the honest people, the families of the victims, against the terrorists. She does not want to do that. She's always taking the side of, hey, it's not all Muslims.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying it's all Muslims. No one has come out and said it's all Muslims. What the problem is, everyone killing is a Muslim from these terrorist attacks, and they don't kill in the name of Jesus, they don't kill in the name of Moses, they kill in the name of Muhammad, and they kill in the name of Allah. So your Muhammad, clearly there's a problem with your version of Muhammad, because we have peaceful Muslims such as the Ahmadiyya, peaceful Muslims such as myself, who don't go around killing. In fact, there are Muslims that are actually victims of ISIS, and they don't even defend themselves against ISIS because they don't believe in politics, in religion, and a military branch within the government. Linda Sarsour has an agenda, and she wants to spread that agenda throughout the West.
Yes.
The privilege that she has is that she was born in America, which means she can't be outcasted from within the very atmosphere, American atmosphere or civilization. But, you know, it's a matter of giving her the right questions. If Linda, if you're so against Israel for forming 60, 70 years ago, why aren't you against Palestine when it formed in the 1940s? Why? Why don't you oppose Pakistan when it formed? Is it because Pakistan is now a Muslim country supporting Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda that I don't see you fighting for Indian rights? But the moment someone says something about Israel, you turn around and say, well, Israel doesn't have the right to exist, even though it's on Jewish land. Because clearly, Moses was in the area before Muhammad. And between Moses and Muhammad, there was Jesus. And we need to be very honest with ourselves when dealing with history, geography, and the political atmosphere that we're living in. Linda does not know where she is going. She has no idea where she's going. Honestly, she has an agenda, and that agenda is to basically paint a beautiful image of her faith, when in reality her faith is infested with radicalization, and her faith is exactly the main branch for ISIS. And her books that she reads and promotes and reveres are the books revered by ISIS, and are the very books ISIS believes in. So Linda, you either come out and denounce your faith and convert to a more peaceful, moderate Islam, such as Ahmadiyya Islam, for example, and denounce what you're doing. She has an agenda, but she doesn't know what she's doing with that agenda. If it's American politics, she brings her agenda into the elections. If it's a media outrage about something, she brings her agenda to the media. If it's a organization, like CARE, for example, CAIR,
Yes.
she brings her agenda through the organization. She doesn't have a set track that you can look at and say, okay, she's been consistent all this time. We know what she wants. She's a really good person. But in reality, I believe she has an agenda, and agenda basically means she's been funded, and being funded basically means there are people that have expectations from you, and when people have expectations from you, then you do not own yourself. That means she is basically a puppet for a higher Islamic authority.
Yes. Well, I really do hope that it turns out that you do get to debate with her, because I think it will be very informative and educational for a lot of people. So I really do hope that does happen. So I know, as you said, that the majority of Muslims do follow and believe in the more radical and violent and murderous version of Islam. So given that knowledge, do you support Muslims immigrating to the West?
Muslims migrating to the West are not all religious Muslims. Many Muslims migrating to the West actually want to get away from the Islamic governments and Islamic culture. So when looking at Muslim migration to the West, some of them are actually converts to Christianity, some of them are ex-Muslims, some of them are complete atheists, some of them just don't want anything to do with religion. So just because the name's Muhammad or Hussein, it doesn't mean they actually practice Sharia law.
Yes, so maybe then to rephrase, would you support then a vetting process?
Well, a vetting, a very strict filtration, and a temporary ban. A temporary ban is what I would suggest the most. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, many of us, at least on the right, do think that that's a very reasonable thing, and really didn't understand the outrage when President Trump proposed the ban, even though it wasn't a ban. It was a travel ban for 90 days. So, but the outrage was unbelievable surrounding it. So that really confused us. But so what then is your advice to just the average people who are, whenever a terrorist attack happens, who are lashing out against those who are trying to speak out against what's happening regarding Islam? Because I know I've seen you tweet about it after terror attacks. There are so many people that just automatically say, as you said, what Linda Sarsour says, it's not all Muslims, but they're not actually opening themselves to a debate. So what would you say to these people?
Whenever terrorist attacks happen, it just reflects the amount of power and control our government has. There are countries that go on for 10, 20 years without a terrorist attack. There are countries like that. That shows you the strength of intelligence, the cooperation of the government departments, and so on. Whenever a terrorist attack happens and a country declares a state of emergency, that basically means that the country doesn't know what it's doing. It needs an emergency meeting to figure things out. And for a country to reach that stage, that's very sad. And a respected government is a respected government that has strong borders for its country and does not allow radicals to undertake terrorist attacks under its watch. When you see people going around radicalizing youth, radicalizing people, stop playing the victim card for them. Because they thrive and they actually grow and they spread. Radicalization spreads because of the tolerance of the left. Sometimes tolerance is good, but when it's actually tolerance that is paving the way for terrorism, then the left would be guilty of terrorism as well. Now, not all of the left are wrong. Many of the left are just very neutral people who don't want to do anything. And there are some really good people out there that I would support and love and care. Me being someone who believes that my mission is a mission of peace, I embrace everyone, the left and the right, and I love them all. But there are specific politicians that brainwash these poor innocent crowds and turn them into leftist activists that go online and start cursing and insulting. And this also happens to me. I mean, the left says they love Muslims and they want to stand up for Muslim rights and they're for human rights and for freedom of speech, and I'm a human being and I'm Muslim, and you want to take all my rights away from me just because I have conservative views. And I do lean towards the right. I'm not going to lie. I do support Donald Trump's ban on Muslims, even if that be myself, because you guys there, you need to figure stuff out. You guys seriously have a problem. Whoever turns around and says there is no problem is lying. And there have been leaked videos that show Muslims in meetings clearly stating what their agenda is, and that is to take over America. Have you seen these videos, Brittany?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Would you mind if I played it for you?
Oh, absolutely. Just hold it. You can hold it up to the camera.
Yeah, I'll play it for you. And I also played this for one of the brothers in an interview. But this is some serious business. We have now leaked videos dating back to 1989 in America, where they clearly say that their role in America is to overtake the country. And I'll just let you hear it now.
Wow.
Areas that education is one of the most important areas that Muslims have to address. And while our final objective, is not just to become part of the system that we experience now and that we see, our final objective is to create our own Islamic systems, and not only create Islamic systems for Muslims, but to look at all the other people who are sharing this country with us as potential Muslims. And if we look at them as potential Muslims and feel that we have the obligation, which Allah has told us, to try to bring them into the same style of thinking, into the same way of behaving, into the same objectives that we have, then we have to have some way that we can communicate with them and some way we can work with them. And in that long-range process of making America Muslim, all of America Muslim, then we have to have some actual short-range goals. We have to have some way of dealing with them and know how we're going to deal with them and in which ways, and be very calculated about it, or else we will not accomplish our goals.
Wow, that's...
This is the lady. This is the lady talking.
Oh my goodness.
This is a video from 1989.
That's really terrifying.
From 1989. I can tag you on this on Twitter. Then you can possibly even share it to your friends and say, this is the video we were referring to in the...
and I'll link it in the description interview of this video as well. Yes, for sure. Wow, thank you very much for sharing that. Yes, I was not aware.
No problem. So yeah, we do have these agendas that are funded by Saudi Arabia, and this lady basically follows the same book as Linda Sarsour. And unless Linda comes out...
So it would be then spreading Islam by force throughout America, according to their agenda.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yes, which is terrifying, to put it lightly. Would mean conversion or death, correct?
Yeah, it's either conversion or death, according to the Bukhari, which Linda believes in, and which this lady believes in. And they cannot deny. If Linda says that she does not believe in conversion by the sword, then she's an apostate, according to her faith. You can't not believe in conversion by sword, because her grandparents became Muslim by the sword to begin with. If she's from Palestine, and then Islam emerged from Arabia to Palestine. Yes, the Prophet Muhammad was visiting Palestine, Jerusalem, during his life. However, he was amongst a Jewish and Christian majority. And he didn't have the resources to spread his religion and fight during that time. Not at all. So it couldn't have been done during the time of Prophet Muhammad. So it had to have been done during the time of the caliphs who ruled this area. And when they came to the Jews and Christians, and they forced them into Islam. If Sister Linda is from that very area, from that geographic area, then her ancestors are actually Christians who converted from Judaism. And they were forced into Islam by the sword. And the one who did that was her caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, who she loves and she reveres, who brought her ancestors into Islam. She needs to be very honest with herself, with her history, with her lineage, and turn around and say, we are sorry, humanity, we have a problem, and let's solve this problem together.
Would be wonderful. So for my final question then, in regards to the Muslims who have already either immigrated to Western, different parts of Western civilization, or who were either maybe born there and have been radicalized, what is the solution then? Because obviously there are radical Muslims living in the West right now. What do you believe is the solution to this problem? Because obviously if we don't do something, it's just going to keep happening. The terrorist attacks.
We either deal with it gradually or we deal with it immediately. Gradually means we slowly start dealing with the community that we have, the radical Muslim community that we have, and which would probably mean 500 people in every state. So we're looking at less than 1 million people. In the thousands we're looking at. I mean, in Australia we have 500 people on the watch list. But there are others who share the same thoughts but still haven't surfaced. If we're going to deal with things gradually, then you're going to be upsetting them, which basically means there is a potential for more terrorist attacks and acts of violence and riots and so on during that time until we reach our goal. Or we can deal with it immediately, shut the borders and start deporting people who have threatened to attack the police, who have been convicted under counter-terrorism laws, who have been imprisoned and charged for religious violence, Islamic violence, and just deport them, especially if they were not born in this country, because we cannot have a multicultural society on the expense of our nation's blood. We don't want that.
No.
And I'm not here trying to incite fear or anything like that, but it's more of raising awareness as to how this matter needs to be looked into in the future.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Imam. Where is the best place for the viewers of this video to find out more about what you're trying to do in regards to reforming Islam? Because it would be great if we could spread the word and raise awareness here for people to support it and share the information.
In the near future, I will be announcing a project, and hopefully I'll get in touch with you, and then we can discuss together about my goals and so on. Yes. Well, thank you very much as well.
Great. So I will then link your Twitter and your Facebook. Are these the best places for people to follow you at this time?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. I will link them then. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for your time. It's really been wonderful to have you.
God bless you. Likewise. Thank you very much, Brittany.